Thank you. You mentioned eligible and non-eligible elements of the interchange cost. Can you explain? So you've identified in your cost study and way back in 2002 that rewards points and I'll focus on reward points, but others are non-eligible costs. But again, we have this sort of threat and this clear link between interchange and rewards. Why do you see it as a non-eligible cost, and why do banks see it as an eligible cost?
So let me go right back to why we focused on interchange in the first place back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. At the time, we had credit cards were the use of credit cards was rising by about 30% a year, and debit cards. There was FPOS debit cards, and Visa and MasterCard debit cards were really not in the picture at all. It was Visa and MasterCard credit and FPOS debit. That's what you had. And FPOS debit, as an interesting piece of information, interchange flowed the other direction. Interchange was paid to the merchant's bank and then was refunded to the merchant. So it ran the exact opposite direction of credit cards. What was happening was that credit cards, the interchange revenue from that was being used to fund loyalty points. So in effect, the price signal on a credit card was saying, I get paid money to use a credit card, why wouldn't I use it? And our cost studies said, but credit cards are more expensive than debit cards. Why would you have a price signal that encouraged you to use credit over debit? So that was sort of the gist of where we started from. So why are eligible costs? Why are loyalty points, in our view, not eligible costs? They're basically to encourage people to use a credit card, and with the rise of debit cards now, in fact, credit cards aren't the predominant payment, but the people who use them are wealthier, they have higher incomes, they use the interest-free period so they don't pay any interest, and they get loyalty points. So in effect, the higher interchange that's funding those is being paid by everyone, and it's funding people who are wealthier, higher incomes to get loyalty points. That's why it's not an eligible cost. That doesn't seem like a sensible way to incentivise the payment system, and that's why we don't think that the cost of loyalty points should be included as an eligible cost for interchange.
They do, though, right? They're in most of their, in most of their consultation paper responses in the submissions, they're like, you know, we'll take your rewards points away if you touch interchange.
Yeah, and if they do, they do.
Yep.
And again, back to the point, the loyalty points are giving a signal to a certain group of people: use your credit card as much as you can, even though it's more costly than a debit card. Use it as much as you can, and the merchants pay more for those credit card transactions, so that's baked into their prices. And who is paying those higher prices? It's the consumers that don't use the credit cards.
Which are particularly younger people, aren't they?
Younger people with debit cards, people
lower incomes.
Lower income. Yeah.
1 minute. I've got about 45 minutes worth of questions here.
You have a thank you card to be old.
Just
very quickly.
We've spoken about blended pricing. I notice in your and I note this is your draft position, and you know there may be movement, there may not be, but you didn't seek to address that in your draft proposal in terms of breaking that down. I mean, personally, I see that as a reason why we've got sort of this distorted. I mean, that's why least cost routing, I think, doesn't really work. And that's why I think small businesses in particular are getting surcharges.
Well,
how did you look at it?
We haven't addressed the blended pricing issue because we've basically said the blended pricing was resulting in a surcharging regime which wasn't giving a price signal anymore.
Right.
So in saying, in the position we've taken, which is, look, let's simplify things, let's just not allow surcharging anymore, the blended pricing issue in effect goes away. It's a cost of business now for businesses, and it's just like, more or less like electricity. It just gets folded into into that.
Thank you.